Here's an example of completing the square where there's not an understood 1 in front of your x squared term. In this case, we see a -2 in front of the x squared term. What we will do in this situation is start the same way as we did before by separating the x squared and the x term from the constant term. Now, there is an added step when there is not a 1 in front of x squared. What you must then do is you must factor whatever value is in front of x squared out of the x squared term and the x term. So in this case, we see there's a -2 in front of x squared, so we must factor a -2 out, and then we'd be left with an x squared minus a 5x. Now, when you do this, I still want you to leave some space here so that you're able later to add an additional value to the x squared and the x term. Keep the -23/2 out to the side. Okay, from here we need to do our scratch work. For our scratch work, it's important that we wait to do this until we have an x squared term and an x term that has an understood 1 in front of x squared. So we see now on the inside we have the understood 1. So now we go and look at whatever value is in front of the x, and we take a half of that value and we square it. Well, we can't take a half of -5 without having the decimal, so we're going to put the -5/1 and just multiply those values. So we'd have -5/2 squared. And then finally, this will be +25/4. So now I'm going to take the 25/4 and I'm going to add that to the inside with my x squared and my x term. Now, instead of simply subtracting out 25/4, I have to subtract out not only 25/4, but 25/4 multiplied by whatever value I have in the front. So 25/4 times -2. The -2 that I have on the outside of my parentheses would be understood to be distributed to all 3 terms that are on the inside of that group. So when I add 25/4 to the inside of that group, I'm actually adding 25/4 times the -2 that I have on the outside. And so when I come to take it away over on the far right side, I better make sure that I take away that value times whatever number that I had on the outside. Okay, from here, let's simplify. We have -2. We know that we need to factor here. I'm going to use x and x. And then remember, we can go up here, and whatever value I had before I squared it would be the value that goes in the factorization. Now I need to do things with the fractions that are on the far right side. I'm going to keep the -23/2, and then I'm going to combine these two by multiplying. I have a negative times a negative, which would end up being a positive. And then what I can actually do is I can cross reduce. I have a 4 on the bottom and a 2 on the top. 2 would go into both of those, leave me a 1 on the top, a 2 on the bottom. So this would actually be plus 25/2 when I'm done. From here, just rewriting, this would be -2. This would be x minus 5/2 squared. And then I see conveniently enough that I have a common denominator with my 2 fractions in blue. So -23/2 plus 25/2 ends up just being 2/2, which would then reduce. So I'd have -2 x minus 5/2 squared plus 1, and I can bring my function notation down, and here is my function with completing the square.